If you are building AI agents, mastering the skill of creating tools is absolutely crucial. Without this skill, your agents will never achieve the quality necessary for real-world implementation. In today's video, I'll break down a complex tool I've built, revealing the fundamental process behind creating tools that actually elevate and enhance an agent's capabilities. To start off the video, I'll define exactly how I look at tools. Tools enable agents to perform actions beyond generating text and allow them to transcend their training data. Okay, so we can break that down into two key parts. Number one being performing actions beyond generating text, and second, transcending an LLM's training data. What I mean by the first part is while these LLMs are primarily designed for generating text, tools enable them to trigger real-world actions. For example, an agent can have tools that allow it to send text messages or emails, book events onto a calendar, and much more. This allows it to evolve from a simple chatbot into a complex system that uses reasoning to perform actions. Now, the second part, which is transcending an LLM's training data, is about this issue of LLMs not having context around our specific information and data. For example, a company's sales reports or SOPs aren't in an LLM's training data, and therefore without supplementing that context, the LLM wouldn't be able to answer questions around that topic. To overcome this, we use tools like RAG to fetch relevant context from a knowledge base, or we can use database querying to access dynamically changing data. These tools enable LLMs to provide informed responses on topics that are outside of its training. Okay, now that we have a definition of tools, let me quickly show you how they fit into the bigger picture of AI agents. So as you can see in this diagram, we have four key components, that being the prompt, the AI model, the knowledge base, and the tools. Now, these four components are all crucial for an actually effective agent. But today we're focusing on the tools, as that's really what transforms something from a simple chatbot into an actual complex AI agent. Now, I am thinking about creating videos around these three other components, and if you would like to see those videos, then just let me know in the comments, and also let me know which one of these topics would you think would be the most valuable for you when it comes to building AI agents. Okay, so now I can actually go over and explain what I've built and how I've built this tool. So the tool I've built is called Check Availability. Now, the goal of this tool is extremely simple. It is to give a start time and an end time as a parameter, and within that time frame, what is the availability in our calendar for some sort of appointment or a meeting or a quote, whatever it is. And then obviously we want to take that availability and pass it to the agent and be like, this is our availability. So then that agent can say that back to the prospect, either via the phone or either via a chatbot. In order to do that, first of all, we have to define our parameters and give a prompt to our agent on how these parameters work. So the two parameters we needed is the start time and the end time. So as you can see, we have start time and end time, and the description, which is the prompt for both these parameters, is check start time for checking calendar availability. If not provided, the start time should default to now. And then for the end time, I've prompted it end time for checking calendar availability. Always specify the day followed by 23:59. The reason why we want to do 23:59 is because if someone says check until Wednesday, we want to check the whole day, right? We don't want to just check Wednesday up until 12. We want to check the whole of Wednesday, and therefore we add the 23:59. Now, one thing I've made a mistake on is these should both be required, so I've just changed that there now. Now, if you're wondering, this is the tool I'm using for this is called Retail. It's just an AI voice agent platform. I've used VAPI, and I'm currently trying out this new AI infrastructure, Retail, as it has much better testing functionality, which I like a lot. Okay, so now we can go onto make.com, as the agent knows what parameters to send to this scenario, and this is where all the logic actually happens. One of the most important things when building tools, and is essential for building good tools, is to offload as much reasoning from the main agent, that being this agent, which is just the single prompt and the LLM. And we want to offload as much reasoning from that agent to the tool. So that's why when we prompt it, we just say, give me next Wednesday in natural language as the end time, rather than give me 2024-06-29, because that's the date we are at right now. You know, we want to offload as much reasoning, and if someone says in natural language, check until next Wednesday, we just give that to the agent to do. That's why we have these two OpenAI steps, which will basically take that natural language, and then we also input the date today, and then it's like, okay, so format this natural language based off what the date is right now, format that natural language into the correct format. You can see that going on right here in this OpenAI step. That being, you are a data format. Your job is to take a date said in natural language and to format to year, month, date, hour, minute, second. And then here is an example: time now 2023 05 14, time 10, end time this Tuesday 23:59. And as you can see, we just go 2 days ahead because this date is a Sunday. We go 2 days ahead, 23:59, and then we just have one example. So in order to keep this prompt nice and short, and the note being your output must not have any comments, your output must be only the date. Then we give it the time now, that being just using this now function in make.com, formatting it. Then we also give it the end time argument that we get from the agent, which would be something like next Wednesday at 23:59. And as you can see, we have these two routes that the scenario can go on. And basically the reason why I have that is if the argument is now, therefore they want to check, you know, however many days in advance from now, then we go up the top and it's just, we use a few different requests. That being, in this date from, we actually use this format date now in order to have the date as now. I don't allow people to book meetings with me unless it's 2 hours in advance. So that's why we're just adding 2 hours. Then the date to is the only thing that this formatted. So we can put that response into the cal.com API. That is what I'm using for my availability check. I use cal.com, as you can see, for my business and for my meetings. And basically this has an extremely good API completely for free. And for that, all we need is a date from, a date to, and the event type ID, which is basically just the ID of the type of event that it is, because my account on cal.com has multiple events. One is a AI audit, one is this 30-minute discovery call, and some events might have different schedules. So I might only do these discovery calls from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m, let's say, and then I do the audits only in the morning. So obviously our availability changes depending on the event. That API is extremely simple. However, the problem with this API is that it brings back extremely ugly data. If you look here, this is an example of the data that we get from this cal.com API. And if you look at it, you have no idea what's going on. We can see that we are busy 2024 07 02, and that ends at 13. So for me, it's just too much and I can't even understand any of it. I don't expect an AI to be able to like consistently know when we have availability from this data, because this data does actually tell us when we are available in a specific time range, but it's extremely hard for an agent to be able to decipher that, or an AI to be able to decipher that. So in order to fix that, I've built some code in a tool called Replit, which just lets me deploy software, or I guess code, much quicker. So I've just deployed a Flask app, which I'm not going to get into today in this tutorial, but it basically allows me to send this JSON data, which we will get from the cal.com API, and then it will basically format it into a much nicer format. Okay, so this is an example of roughly what the data formatted actually looks like. As you can see, now we have it much nicer. Availability for selected time, the date being Friday 2024, June 28th, British Standard Time, from 4:15 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. Monday, we have 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday, we have 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday, we have 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The readability of this data is much easier for me, for you, and for the AI. So then we take this data, which we get from this Replit code, and then we send it back to the retail AI agent. The only other thing I can explain is the other side of this, which is just a bit different. In this one, we actually get the agent to output both the start time and the end time at the same time, like in a format like this. Which again, I'll go into Replit and show you. As you can see, it's just a JSON. And then we pass that JSON into two actual variables, that being start time and end time. And then we send that again to the cal.com API. Just the same, we get the data, we send it to the Replit code, get it formatted, and then send it to the webhook response. Both sides are basically the same. The only difference is that for this one, we're using the start time as always now, and this time it depends on what the person said. So if we now run this scenario and I go into Replit and actually start this app, all this code. So what I'll do is python3 main.py. I'm not going to go into detail on the coding side of things. This is a little bit more advanced, and you could probably format and parse and do all of that within make.com itself for the data that I showed you for this thing. However, it just takes a lot more time, and you could probably get all of this code generated in seconds or minutes by just prompting an AI. Okay, so now what I can do is press this test LLM, which basically allows me to test how this LLM would actually take and perform actions, what kind of text it would generate. Obviously, this would be an AI voice agent, so the text would be transcribed into voice and said back to the customer. This agent is actually exactly the same as the agent I built for my last video, which was basically building an agent for home services, specifically a junk removal service. But this time I'm adding one more tool, which is this check availability tool, which, as you can see, we get to the point in this conversation where it's like, I'd be happy to check our availability. Can you narrow it down like a time frame? Let's say until this Friday. So I can press send. And this is basically when this webhook will be used. And there we go. We are now sending data via make.com, and the response is sent back. So if we go into retail, there we go. We have our response. So if we go into our tool, as we don't need to do any more testing, we know our tool has worked perfectly. We can look at the data that has been sent back. And as you can see, this is the data that we get from the replit, the code which has been formatted. And if we actually look at the replit, we can see we have this post format availability. There's nothing really else for me to say. This is a more complex tool, and it does exactly what a complex and actual powerful tool does, which is offload as much reasoning from the main agent over here and give as much reasoning to the tool scenario. This could be in make.com, or it could be all built in a code platform like Replit. And we are getting dynamic data, which is outside of its training data, to the agent so that it can answer those context specific questions.